Hey everyone, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I am Brad. We were sent a code for Neon Inferno. So this is kind of your old school 2D run and gun game, and I think the reason that this stood out to me is if you just look at it. If you're looking at the footage right now, this game just looks so cool. And I saw the trailer for it, and my first thought was, if this game has even decent gameplay to match that look, and it ends up being really good. I think it has a couple of drawbacks to it, and we'll get to those, but this is just a really, really solid, old school, Super Nintendo style game where you're just running through and you're shooting stuff. There's not a ton else going on. It is just a really good looking version of that. And yeah, for me, the main takeaway from this is just the visual style. It is so distinct. It's that kind of cyberpunk near future. I think it's 2055 the game takes place in, that, kind of near future cyberpunk, but it just nails everything about how this looks. And it's just one of those games that as you're playing, there's just more and more cool scenes. You're doing things on jet skis, on motorcycles, and it just has all the kind of cool, unique aesthetics that make you want to keep playing through it. So like I said, once you get past how this looks, you kind of got to get into the gameplay, because I think these games live or die on that. There are so many 2D, left to right, hack and slash, Metroidvania, run and guns, beat 'em ups, all those things are kind of having a resurgence right now. So in order to stand out and in order to kind of be one of those ones that people are actually going to talk about, you have to have great gameplay. This has some pretty good stuff in it. For the controls, it's just kind of your normal thing as you're running through there. You're kind of aiming your gun, you're running, you're shooting. You have a sword to deflect bullets. You have a really good dodge that works really well, that you can kind of skip past bullets, works very well. You do have to shoot diagonal a lot, which I never like in these. I've never been able to figure out. In the 30 plus years I've been playing these things, I feel like I've never been able to really figure out how to make diagonal shooting work well. So I still have that problem with it. But overall, the game plays really well. It does, a better than average job of that. One of the things, though, that is unique, and I feel like, again, kind of to stand out with this kind of just waterfall of this style of games that I feel like comes out of the indie scene nowadays, you kind of have to have some gimmick. So the gimmick with this is that you've got your foreground and you play like normal, but if enemies show up in the background, you can hold on PlayStation, it's R1, and then you get almost like a light gun crosshair in the back where you can shoot at enemies that way. It slows the game down a little bit just because you've kind of got to switch over to that mindset when you do it. So despite being kind of a unique thing, it does, I think, hinder the game a bit, especially in spots where there are just a ton of enemies on screen, where you're getting, 3 or 4 guys in the foreground, 4 or 5 guys in the background. There just ends up being so much crazy going on screen that I almost just felt like I can't focus on what's going on. And those were the issues where the game got a little bit more difficult. I will say that you use it a lot in boss battles too. I thought it worked a little bit better in boss battles where it's just kind of a one-on-one situation, because then you can kind of focus a little bit more and there's not quite the amount of crazy just garbage all over the screen trying to distract you. But ultimately with that, I think it's, at least if nothing else, it's a unique thing to make this game stand out. And it doesn't ever make me think this game's not really good. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, ooh, that's a little tricky. I will say the more I played, the more used to it I got, the better it felt. And it felt a little bit more natural, especially by the last level or two. Again, with these types of games, I think one of the things that's kind of baked in is your assumption of difficulty. So when I see one of these games, I was notoriously bad at Contra back in the day. It made me kind of hate these games a little bit more than I think I probably should have, just because that game was so hard and I'd get so frustrated. So difficulty is kind of something that, I know when I kind of boot one of these up, my first thought is like, oh man, like, am I going to get stuck? Should I play on easy? What should I play on? Like, where am I at? So for this one, I played through the entire game on medium difficulty. There's, easy, medium, hard. And I think it's tough but fair. The checkpoints are really well done, and I think in a game like this, you want good checkpoints where it's like, okay, I feel like it's some work to get to the next checkpoint, but it is doable. I'm never like surprised when I get to the next checkpoint, but I do feel accomplished when I get to the next checkpoint. So I think that works really well. The bosses kind of fit in that. I kind of think of it as like a 3 or 4 turn boss where like you play it once, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? You play it a second time and you realize like, oh, okay, I'm getting the pattern down. And then you play it a third time or a fourth time and you're like, oh, I just played through that entire boss without getting hit. So once you kind of learn the patterns and everything, they get a little bit easier, but you do, 1 or 2 of them just kind of had that feeling of like, oh man, I don't think I'm going to do this. But I never really got hung up on it. I will say I think this game is a game that as you play it and you learn it and you get the controls down really well, and I think this might be a little bit of a genre thing too, is that I feel like level 2 or 3 was the hardest level in the game, just because you don't quite have that mastery of the controls yet, but also the game's starting to ratchet up that difficulty a little bit. So by the time you get to level 5 and 6, you've kind of got the controls down, you're feeling good, you've got a good flow to it and a good rhythm to it, so it doesn't feel as hard because you've got that, versus when it starts ratcheting up, you kind of like, I kind of ran into like a wall, and like, I think it was the second or third level, you can pick which order you go in too, but that second or third one I did, I kind of hit this wall of like, oh no, this might be the spot. Can I go back and turn it to easy? Should I have done that to start with? So I think tough but fair is a good way to kind of describe that. Finally, with this, I haven't mentioned it much outside of the setting when we're talking about the visual style. The story in this game, again, kind of near future cyberpunk, you're kind of this assassin running through these jobs, and that's about it. There's not really that much to it other than that, which again, I think in a game, it's only 6 missions long. It's a shorter game. It's just kind of, the story's just kind of there to keep things moving, to get you from scene to scene, and it does a serviceable job in that regard, but there's no real hook to it. There's nothing I'd have a hard time really giving you the recount of exactly what happened outside of, oh yeah, I fought this boss and this character was this thing, and outside of that I wouldn't really be able to give you too much of an overview, but I don't think that's necessarily a focus in some of these games. So overall, I think this is just a really good example of a game that kind of draws you in with that visual style, but then also has the underlying systems there and the controls, a unique gimmick with it, and just kind of that right difficulty to make a game that is really, really good coming out of a genre that I think can sometimes feel a little overpopulated and kind of hard to pick out where the good ones are and which ones should I avoid, which ones should I look at, because there are just so many. So Neon Inferno, absolutely great, 3 or 4 hours, 6 missions, maybe not even that long, maybe 2 or 3 hours. Like I said, I did struggle for a little bit, but that kind of the 2 or 3 hours, 6 missions, just kind of, I played it over the course of a Saturday. I think it's a pretty good game to check out if you're into this kind of old school style of game. We are Workforce Gaming. You can subscribe to our channel, leave a comment below. There's a link to support us on Patreon as well, where you can listen to bonus audios for extra thoughts on some of the games we talk about, and vote for a game that we play each month. We'll see you later.